Subject: silhouetted federal judge leaning forward over a dark bench, one gloved hand near a case file. Scene: silent federal courtroom with polished wood, blurred seal behind the bench, tension hanging over the defense table. Steely, high-contrast legal documentary, dark blues and charcoal grays with sharp red accents, cinematic low-key lighting, slow push-in lens, no visible faces. Subject: back view of a suited defendant entering a courthouse corridor with hands at his sides. C. Federal courthouse interior leading toward a courtroom doorway, marble floors reflecting cold overhead light. Style: moody political news documentary, deep navy and steel gray palette with subtle crimson highlights, dramatic shadows, handheld cinematic framing, no visible faces. Subject: silver handcuffs dangling from a deputy marshal's belt beside a dark suit jacket. Scene: narrow exit corridor near a courtroom marshal's door, harsh institutional lighting and muted federal signage. Style: urgent documentary realism, high contrast with dark blue and graphite tones, metallic highlights, tight close-up, no visible faces. Subject: scratched brass storage unit key with a faded orange 200 Fort tag resting on black evidence cloth. Scene: evidence table inside a dim federal courtroom, blurred legal binders and microphones in the background. Steely, forensic documentary close-up, cold blue-gray grade with restrained red accents, sharp macro focus, cinematic vignette. Subject: silhouetted industrial debris trucks lined up beneath storm clouds. Scene: disaster cleanup zone near flooded streets and temporary federal contract trailers, broken trees and caution tape in the distance. Style: dark professional news documentary, slate blues and storm grays with muted red warning lights, wide cinematic lens, no visible faces. Subject: stacks of contractor invoices and payment forms spread across a dark conference table. Scene: corporate office at night with city lights outside and sealed file boxes against the wall. Lump 8. Investigative documentary aesthetic, cool steel blue grade with red pen marks, hard directional lighting, overhead camera angle. Subject: jury verdict forms clipped beside a heavy federal case binder. Scene: courtroom clerk station with wood grain, legal pads, and a blurred American flag in the background. Style: serious courtroom documentary, charcoal and navy tones with red seal accents, crisp close framing, dramatic side lighting. Subject: back view of defense counsel rising from the table with one hand on a lectern. Scene: federal courtroom during a release hearing, second row silhouettes of family members behind him. Xylee, cinematic legal news coverage, dark blue and gray color grade with subtle red tie accent, low-key lighting, medium telephoto shot, no visible faces. Subject: folded male hands, resting motionless on a defense table beside a legal pad. Scene: courtroom wood paneling, microphone base, and neatly stacked motions under cold ceiling light. Style: restrained documentary close-up, deep navy and graphite palette, hard contrast, shallow depth of field, no visible faces. Subject: silhouette of a prosecutor standing with an emergency motion held at chest height. Scene: federal courtroom aisle with judge's bench looming above and quiet observers in shadow. Xylee, tense political documentary, dark blues and grays with a single red folder tab, cinematic side lighting, medium wide shot, no visible faces. Subject: legal notepad and pen suddenly stopped mid-sentence on counsel table. CNE, courtroom desktop scattered with motions, exhibits, and a dim laptop glow. Xatstyle, suspenseful documentary insert, cool gray-blue palette with red annotation marks, tight macro framing, dramatic contrast. Subject: judge's hand flipping through freshly filed papers beneath a bench lamp. Scene: elevated bench with courthouse seal, muted courtroom gallery, and microphone cables visible. Stella, formal courtroom documentary, dark blue and charcoal tones with warm paper highlights and restrained red accents, controlled cinematic zoom. Subject: defense attorney's outstretched arm asking for more time while the bench remains still. See scene: federal courtroom frozen between argument and ruling, silence visible in rigid posture and still papers. LAR, high-stakes news documentary, cold steel blue grade with crimson undertones, low-angle composition, hard shadowing, no visible faces. Subject: sealed evidence bag containing the brass key carried by gloved hands. Scene: courtroom exhibit path between counsel table and clerk's desk, varnish wood and muted flags behind. Style: Forensic legal documentary, deep navy and gray palette, with red evidence label, crisp close-up, cinematic tracking feel. Subject: navy raincoat hanging open with an inside pocket partially exposed. CCN: search warrant processing room with tagged household items, evidence boxes, and fluorescent light reflections. Stala: investigative documentary look, blue-gray shadows with subtle red tag accents. Stark overhead lighting, tight frame, no visible faces. Subject: industrial storage facility, gate keypad glowing in the pre-dawn dark. CE: harbor lock storage on the edge of the city. Chain link fencing, warehouse rows, and damp pavement. Style: nor legal news documentary. Midnight blues and gunmetal grays with red LED highlights. Cinematic wide shot, no visible faces. Subject: rental contract on a clipboard beside a phone number, printout ending in 8821. Sensi: Prosecutors exhibit display table with layered records and evidence stickers. Zensi: procedural documentary insert, cold gray-blue palette with red underline marks, overhead macro angle, sharp contrast. Subject: prosecutor's hand pointing to a phone number on an enlarged exhibit board. Scene: courtroom presentation screen glowing above the jury box area, defense table in deep shadow. Lime: urgent courtroom documentary, dark navy and slate tones with vivid red highlights on the screen, dramatic side lighting, no visible faces. Subject: judge's gavel hand paused while an objection hangs in the air. Scene: federal courtroom bench and counsel tables locked in tense stillness, legal papers unmoving. Stoil: austere judicial documentary, dark blues and graphite grays with faint crimson undertone, tight cinematic crop, hard contrast. Subject: illuminated gate log with 2 late-night timestamps circled in red. Scene: courtroom monitor filling the darkened room with cold electronic light, wood paneling barely visible. St. Dilly: investigative documentary graphic feel, deep blue-black grade with red circles and white timestamp glow, high contrast close-up. Subject: black SUV seen from surveillance angle approaching a storage keypad at night. SCN: industrial storage lot with metal doors, wet asphalt, and sodium vapor lights. Style: grainy surveillance-inspired documentary, dark navy and gray with red taillight accents, fixed camera composition, cinematic realism, no visible faces. Subject: back view of a man in a baseball cap at a keypad wearing a dark raincoat. CN: security camera still outside a storage unit row, fence shadows and concrete barriers around him. CL: tense evidence-driven documentary, blue-gray monochrome with muted red security lights, grainy texture, no visible faces. Subject: lawyer leaning close toward a motionless defendant while the exhibit screen glows ahead. Scene: defense table, inside a silent courtroom, polished wood and shadowed gallery behind them. Styly, serious political news documentary, cool charcoal and navy palette with red screen spill, medium shot from the side, no visible faces. Subject: partially raised, storage unit door revealing bankers' boxes stacked in rows. Scene: dim industrial unit interior with concrete floor, metal walls, and deep receding shadows. Style: investigative documentary, dark blue and gunmetal tones with sparse red evidence tags, wide cinematic composition, no visible faces. Subject: 12 bankers' boxes, 3 hard drives, and a wrapped backup phone arranged as seized evidence. Scene: storage unit floor under a single harsh bulb, gray accordion folder and shred bag nearby. Style: forensic documentary tableau, cold steel blue palette with red tag accents, crisp overhead shot, hard contrast. Subject: torn invoice drafts spilling from an unfinished shred bag. Scene: shadowy storage unit corner beside metal shelving and dust-streaked concrete. Style: dark evidence-focused documentary, blue-gray grade with scarlet paper tab accents, dramatic sidelight, macro detail framing. Subject: defense counsel's hand opening an explanation beside a locked corporate office door. Scene: imagine Meridian headquarters hallway access badge panel, glowing red after conviction. Styly, moody legal documentary, deep navy and graphite, with red access light emphasis, cinematic medium shot, no visible faces. Subject: cracked older model phone held up in a gloved hand above the courtroom rail. Senshen: dim federal courtroom with monitor reflections and exhibit binders below. Style: high contrast courtroom documentary, cold blue-gray palette with red alert accents, tight close-up, dramatic spotlighting. Subject: unsent text message on a damaged phone screen with the words about gray binders and yellow tabs. Scene: courtroom evidence display enlarged against the dark background, silent gallery beyond. Style: digital forensic documentary, blue-black screen glow with red cursor accents, sharp macro frame, urgent cinematic feel. Subject: second text message ordering someone to call Unit 214 personal furniture. Scene: Prosecutors' exhibit monitor dominating the courtroom with shadowy figures frozen below. Style: investigative political news documentary, deep navy and gray with vivid red highlight lines, clean close-up, hard contrast. Subject: still courtroom gallery seen as dark silhouettes facing a glowing evidence screen. Scene: federal courtroom suspended in silence after the message appears, bench and flags barely visible. Teal: ominous documentary atmosphere, dark blue and charcoal palette with red screen cast, wide cinematic framing, no visible faces. Subject: trio of external hard drives connected beside raw accounting exports on a monitor. Scene: evidence processing lab table with spreadsheets, adapters, and sealed forensic bags. Style: meticulous legal investigation documentary, steel blues and graphite with red status LEDs, overhead cinematic shot, crisp contrast. Subject: spreadsheet rows showing duplicate truck numbers and altered route data. Scene: enlarged courtroom display with metadata and hidden columns exposed in a dark room. Stila: technical forensic documentary, blue-black interface with red flagged cells, sharp digital close-up, cold dramatic lighting. Subject: metadata window showing initials, NP, beside edit history. C. Courtroom screen towering over shadowed counsel tables and empty witness box. Style: urgent evidence documentary, dark navy and gray with crimson annotation glow, tight monitor crop, cinematic precision. Subject: defense attorney's arm raised in objection beside stacked legal binders. Scene: release hearing turning tense under the judge's bench and cold ceiling lights. Steely: formal courtroom documentary, charcoal and deep blue grayed with muted red accents. Side angle composition, no visible faces. Subject: judge's hand resting above a legal pad while asking whether the issue is guilt or concealment. Scene: austere federal bench with microphone, lamp, and courthouse seal in shadow. Style: restrained judicial documentary, dark steel blue palette with faint red undertones, dramatic close-up, hard-edged light. Subject: prosecutor's silhouette at counsel table answering with one finger on the record. Second: federal courtroom framed by wood panels and a glowing exhibit monitor. Style: sharp political documentary, navy and graphite with small red accents, cinematic medium profile, low-key lighting, no visible faces. Subject: row of empty chairs and still papers after the answer lands. Scene: courtroom air thick with realization, gallery and bench held in rigid silence. Style: atmospheric legal documentary, deep blue and gray grayed with restrained crimson shadows, wide static composition, no visible faces. Subject: special agent's back view at the witness stand with one hand near an oath card. Scene: federal courtroom witness box beneath seal and flag, clerk station visible below. Style: serious law enforcement documentary, dark navy and charcoal tones with red file-tapped accents, cinematic medium shot, no visible faces. Subject: evidence map connecting a storage facility, phone records, and a townhouse search. Scene: prosecutor's presentation board illuminated in front of the witness stand, courtroom in shadow. Style: investigative documentary graphic style, blue-gray palette with red connection lines, crisp frontal framing. Subject: agent's gloved hand indicating surveillance stills, gate logs, and subscriber returns. Scene: courtroom monitor packed with corroborating evidence, bench looming above. Steely: procedural documentary, dark blues and graphite with bright red circles and arrows, high contrast close-up. Subject: gray accordion folder opened under evidence lights. Scene: clerk's exhibit table with county comparison sheets, FEMA references, and handwritten percentages. Stila: forensic paper trail documentary, cold gray-blue tones with red pen marks, macro overhead angle, dramatic contrast. Subject: comparison sheets showing billed amounts to FEMA and local agencies side by side. Scene: spread documents on black tablecloth with tabs, clips, and annotation stickers. Style: investigative financial crime documentary, steel blue and charcoal palette with red highlighted discrepancies, crisp detail shot. Subject: Rigid back view of the defendant holding posture at the defense table. See scene. Silent courtroom as pressure mounts, defense binders and microphones framing the moment. Style. Tense cinematic legal documentary. Dark navy and slate with subtle crimson accent light. Medium shot from behind. No visible faces. Subject. Courtroom speaker and evidence monitor playing a recovered voicemail. See scene. Dim hearing room with gallery silhouettes and papers frozen mid-turn. Style. Suspense-driven documentary. Blue-black palette with red waveform accents, dramatic low-key lighting, tight composition. Subject. Phone audio waveform rising beside the quoted instruction not to put anything in email. Scene. Enlarged display screen in a dark courtroom, witness stand blurred behind it. Style. Technical documentary, deep navy interface with red waveform peaks, crisp close-up, high contrast. Subject. Gallery silhouettes leaning subtly toward the sound source. Scene. Courtroom benches under faint overhead lights as caution turns into control. Style. Ominous legal news documentary. Charcoal and midnight blue tones with faint red glow, wide static framing, no visible faces. Subject. Backup phone charger plugged into a bedside outlet beside a cufflink box marked with initials. See scene. Townhouse bedroom search scene with seized items arranged under warrant team flashlights. Steal. Search warrant documentary. Cold blue-gray shadows with red evidence tags. Close-up still life. Stark realism. Subject. Call log entries to Darren Voss displayed on a phone extraction report. See scene. Courtroom screen filling the dark room while the bench watches from above. Steal. Evidence-focused documentary, blue-black digital grade with red flagged call times, clean close-up, hard contrast. Subject. Unmoving judge's silhouette above the courtroom while counsel offers an explanation. See scene. Bench elevated over still defense and prosecution tables, nothing in the room softening the tension. Lila. Austere federal court documentary, dark navy and graphite palette, with restrained crimson undertone, low-angle cinematic framing. No visible faces. Subject. Judge leaning forward with a finger on the bench as he asks about the second key and hidden files. Scene. Federal courtroom narrowed to the bench defense table and an exhibit screen glowing in the dark. Style. High-stakes courtroom documentary, steel blue and charcoal tones with red accent spill, slow dramatic push-in, no visible faces. Subject. Defendant's hands clasping and unclasping beside counsel after the devastating question. See scene. Defense table under harsh overhead light with sealed exhibits nearby. Steal. Psychological legal documentary, dark blue-gray with muted red reflections, tight close-up. Cinematic tension. Subject. Voicemail transcript and storage unit exhibit visible while the defendant hesitates. Scene. Courtroom frozen between question and answer, gallery shadows deepening behind. ST. Documentary suspense aesthetic, deep navy and graphite palette with scarlet annotation highlights, medium wide shot, no visible faces. Subject. Judge's silhouette asking again, where is the second key? Over a silent courtroom. Scene. Elevated bench, dark counsel tables, and a glowing evidence monitor holding everyone in place. Nihili. Stark judicial documentary, black-blue, and gunmetal tones with red undertones, low-key lighting, long lens composition, no visible faces. Subject. Twin brass key with a blue float tag photographed on top of a banker's box. Scene. Inside storage unit 214 before collection, concrete floor and stacked records surrounding it. Style. Forensic documentary macro, cold steel blue palette with contrasting red evidence marker, razor-sharp close-up, dramatic vignette. Subject. Two separate keys displayed side by side in evidence photos, one orange tagged and one blue tagged. See scene. Courtroom monitor presenting the visual contradiction of overshadowed wooden rails. Style. Decisive legal documentary, dark navy and slate with controlled red highlights, crisp split frame close-up. Subject. Motionless papers and half-lifted hands in the gallery after the two-key reveal. SC scene. Federal courtroom suspended in a short, heavy silence bench and flags dim behind. Style. Atmospheric documentary, charcoal and midnight blue grade with faint red ambient accents, wide still composition, no visible faces. Subject. Signed judicial order on release revocation beside a gavel and bench microphone. Scene: federal judge's bench at the moment remand is ordered. Courtroom hushed below. Style: formal legal news documentary, deep blue and graphite palette with red seal accent, tight close-up, crisp side lighting. Subject: woman silhouette covering her mouth with both hands beside a smaller, seated silhouette. See scene: second row of a courtroom gallery as marshals begin to move. Style: somber documentary, dark blues and gray-black shadows with restrained red bench reflections. Medium back-angle shot, no visible faces. Subject: deputy marshal's hand touching a defendant's elbow beside the defense chair. Scene: courtroom aisle next to the defense table just after release is revoked. Style: urgent courtroom documentary. Steel blue and charcoal palette with faint red exit light. Tight cinematic crop. No visible faces. Subject: chair legs scraping across polished courtroom floor as a man rises too quickly. See scene: defense table area with wood reflections, scattered papers, and the marshal's stance nearby. Sticio: kinetic legal documentary. Deep navy and graphite tones with red undertones, low-angle close shot, hard shadows, no visible faces. Subject: wrists being guided behind the dark suit jacket for handcuffing. Scene: federal courtroom aisle leading toward the marshal's door. Silent gallery in the background. Style: high contrast documentary realism. Midnight blue and gunmetal gray with sharp metallic highlights and subtle crimson accents. Tight close-up. No visible faces. Subject: gleaming handcuffs clicking shut under courtroom light. SCE: marshal escort zone near the side exit with blurred bench and flag beyond. Style: cinematic legal news close-up. Cold blue-gray grade with metallic silver and muted red reflections. Crisp focus. Dramatic lighting. Subject: closed steel door of a federal holding area with a narrow reinforced window. Scene: detention corridor beneath harsh fluorescent lights echoing institutional emptiness. Style: stark post-ruling documentary. Dark blue and concrete gray palette with small red warning stripes. Symmetrical frame. No visible faces. Subject: empty defense chair beside abandoned legal pads and capped pens. See scene: courtroom after remand. Counsel table left behind under cold overhead light. Style: reflective legal documentary. Charcoal and navy tones with a faint red folder tab. Static composition. Cinematic stillness. Subject: barred holding cell seen through thick corridor glass with a seated silhouette inside. Scene: federal detention facility awaiting sentencing. Sterile walls and monitored doors. Style: somber documentary. Steel blue and gray palette with restrained red alarm lights, long lens framing, no visible faces. Subject: sentencing guidelines binder thick with tabs and highlighted obstruction notes. Scene: prosecutor's office conference table at night overlooking a government district skyline. Steely: professional political documentary. Dark navy and charcoal with sharp red tab accents. Overhead cinematic shot. High contrast. Subject: courthouse exterior at dusk with the Capitol dome faint in the background. See scene: Washington legal district under stormy skies, security barriers, and federal flags visible. Zleel: dark political news documentary. Deep blue and granite gray palette with red taillight glows, wide cinematic establishing shot, no visible faces. Subject: cluster of shadowed executives in suits standing apart around a conference table. See in Meridian office after hours with glass walls, city lights, and sealed records boxes nearby. Stali: white collar crime documentary. Dark blues and grays with subtle red warning reflections. Wide moody frame, no visible faces. Subject: superseding indictment draft clipped above spreadsheets, bank records, and sticky notes. CC: prosecutor war room table beneath task lamps, maps, and timelines pinned to the wall. STCL: investigative legal documentary. Navy and charcoal palette with strong red markup accents. Overhead composition. Sharp contrast. Subject: rental contract signed under a cousin's name beside nominee account paperwork. CEE: evidence board linking straw renters to storage access and shell entities. Stila: forensic conspiracy documentary. Cold gray blue grade with red string connections, medium close framing, hard-edged lighting. Subject: two brass keys crossing over hard drives, torn documents, and a damaged backup phone. Scene: black evidence table suggesting a larger concealment plan beyond the courtroom. Style: climactic investigative documentary, dark navy and graphite with concentrated red accents, dramatic top-down shot, razor-sharp detail. Subject: storage unit door, half-open to stacked boxes disappearing into shadow. C scene. Industrial corridor of identical units under pre-dawn security lights, one compartment clearly active in a larger network. C seal. Ominous legal news documentary. Midnight blue and steel gray with red keypad glow. Wide cinematic frame, no visible faces. Subject. Backup phone, gray folder, and twin keys arranged like final proof on a federal evidence board. Scene. Dark courtroom display area transformed into a visual summary of control and concealment. Style, high contrast political documentary, charcoal and deep navy palette with strategic crimson highlights, slow push-in macro composition. Subject, courthouse steps at night with press lights off and only federal architecture remaining. See scene. Empty exterior after the hearing, columns, security bollards, and wet stone leading into darkness. Zdala, serious end-beat documentary, dark blues and cold grays with faint red reflections on pavement, wide locked-off shot. No visible faces.